6 months ago, we bought this historic stone house in the foothills of the Italian Alps, and we are slowly converting it to be our home. One of the biggest tasks required for this renovation is to dig down 2 feet through clay and solid rock in order to create a crawl space and insulated floor. This week, after digging down, Bradey discovers several sections of the stone walls that are compromised, which requires carefully excavating underneath the stones so as not to collapse the wall. We made a deal with our goat friends that they can come and eat all the grass that they want as long as they stay away from my garden. So we'll see how that goes. But right now they seem pretty happy. They're going to be grazing here all day, I think. So it'll be a nice little treat to be able to enjoy the goats today.
Half the goats figured out how to cross the waterfall river area. And so half the goats are over there. Look at the dog. He's just keeping an eye on all of them. So over the weekend, I managed to pour this guy here and take off these forms, which means we now should have essentially a floating fireplace. I'm going to dig out the remaining supports of dirt here, and then we will be left with a fireplace that is solely resting on these new concrete forms. Well, there we go. We now more or less have a floating fireplace, at least temporarily. For reference and a reminder, the floor used to be right about here, maybe a little bit higher. And now that we've dug down, I'm digging back to the entrance or to the bottom of the fire pit. I'm almost there to add that air intake that I mentioned, which will allow the fire to burn better with less smoke and ultimately create a draft out the chimney so that the smoke isn't going into the rest of the house. I still haven't decided on if I'm going to run gas or propane to be able to, with the flip of the switch, help ignite a wood burning or a wood fireplace, because we always want it to be a wood fireplace with actual real wood, not like a fake log. But it could be interesting to have the assist of the gas or the propane, even just to get the fire started. Haven't decided. It feels a little sacrilegious to me. But if you guys have any opinions, let me know. Well, we have a fairly big problem to overcome. We need to be digging down this entire room down to 50 to 60 centimeters deep. And so far, most of the walls have run far, much deeper than that, and sit on bedrock. This wall does not appear to run down very deep at all. There is loose rubble tossed in there to kind of form a very poor foundation, and then they simply built on that. So that means that this entire wall presumably will need to be underpinned with concrete. What that means is we have to remove the wall, essentially allow it to float, and then come in and pour concrete underneath it, flush up to the wall. So you can kind of see that as I come up and dig next to the wall, rocks are just starting to fall out. And it's not exactly what you want to see, clearly. So things are going to slow down a bit because I will have to take it section by section and slowly remove the stones, dig back as far as possible, put in rebar, and then pour a concrete wall that goes down as deep as possible up to this point here. It's going to be very slow going. This right here is almost pure clay. I'll just set that aside for the kids to play with. So normally with underpinning, you can actually do fairly large sections. I would say 2-3 feet at a time, 3 feet for sure at a time. But starting here in this corner, I don't get the sense that this wall is tied very well into this wall to support it against the weight of this structure. So to start, I'm just going to do a very small section and get that concreted as quickly as possible prior to moving over, and then I can do a much larger section with more confidence. Unfortunately, building the form takes most of the time. I'm taking that pure clay that I found and kind of sealing the gaps. And then we should now be ready to pour the concrete. So we're only about fingers width away from the wall, and then I've built this funnel to kind of funnel it in.
One of our biggest issues here on the property is how much sun we get. And I think this place where we have put the garden is really a good spot. It does get some shade throughout the day, but for the most part it's full sun. And I'm not sure if it's gonna be too much sun. Again, this is my first year really gardening, so I'm learning a lot of lessons. And one thing that I've really been learning through this whole process of just like planting things, I can do all the research in the world, and until I start planting, I'm not really going to learn the lessons that I need to learn. And it's kind of like life. I have really been learning a lot about my fear of failure throughout my life. A lot of things I haven't done because I've been afraid to fail. And as I have been preparing for this garden, it occurred to me that the only way that I can fail is if I don't try. And to me, it's such a metaphor for life, because in gardening, it makes sense. The only way to grow something is to plant it. And if the sun scorches it and it dies because of the soil or because of some other unknown reason, it's a learning opportunity. There's always room to learn and grow and become better at what you're doing. And so often in life, I don't give myself that same perspective when it comes to trying new things that I might not be good at, things that I want to do. I want to grow in my skill, but I'm too afraid of not being perfect, too afraid of not being good enough, and so I don't do it. And that's what I love about being outside, working with your hands, having new perspective, because it kind of gets you out of the normal, just checking off the boxes of the day, and it gets you thinking about your life in a different way. And that's what gardening has been for me so far, and I'm really, really excited to learn more about gardening and just life.
Hey, let me show you this. So, ran into a problem here.
Oh no.
Possibly this entire wall needs to be underpinned.
The whole thing.
Possibly. What looks to me is that because it's kind of sloped down here, what I'm thinking they did is they dug a trench down, because this was approximately the floor height before. They just dug a small trench and then they tossed in stones, which is not very sturdy. And it's fairly strong. There's a lot of weight transferring through here, but it's the fact that the floor slopes out.
Yeah.
And we need to run everything right up to it flush. Some of the stones are loose, but the problem is that specifically here, the other area was a lot easier. The problem is, like, see here, this stone is completely loose.
Oh my goodness.
But when you get back,
Yeah. It's like,
I can't remove this stone.
No. So everything needs to stay. Oh,
Yeah.
That's scary.
So I actually haven't figured out how I'm going to do this yet. We might, the cheap, simple, easy way is to just slop a bunch of concrete on here, sloping away, and it'll kind of keep it all in place all by itself. The hard way is to remove it all and pour an underpinned concrete wall. That's the proper way to do
I hope
it.
it doesn't fall down.
So we have a bit of a surprise for the kids. We've set up a movie projector screen behind me. We've popped some popcorn, and we're going to spend the night watching our friends on YouTube. And right now I'd like to share with you the sponsor of today's video. This is the Nebula Capsule 3 laser projector, which is a battery-powered projector with built-in Dolby audio, all run on the familiar Android TV platform. It has autofocus and auto-adapts to its environment with no cables or power required. But the most impressive fact is that this is a laser projector, which is the most advanced projection technology available. This little guy is the Transformers Limited Edition. There's only about 4,000 of these guys worldwide. Now, the majority of my career has been spent as a cinematographer, where I critically judge the camera sensors and viewing devices down to the individual pixels to judge quality. So trust me when I say that most LED portable projectors are not bright enough to view outside, which is where this laser projector really shines. The laser brightness of the Nebula Capsule 3 is almost twice as bright as comparable devices, and you'll be enjoying true high definition at up to 120 inches. They also sent us their 4K Cosmos projector, which is on a whole nother level in terms of resolution, image quality, and brightness, but both projectors have high quality built-in audio and are run on the Android TV platform, which includes voice command.
Hey Google, play Flying the Nest on YouTube.
So check out the link in the description for a limited time discount, and thanks again Nebula for sponsoring today's video. You just never know where or when they'll show up. Buddy, that's my kitchen. That's disgusting. Fine. Make yourself a home. I think today might be our last day with the goats. I believe the owner is moving them deeper, higher up into the mountain. The dog's convinced to play with some trash. It's actually fascinating to watch him work, watch him take care of the goats. He by himself is leading them through the valley, and they'll just go from property to property, and he makes sure no one gets lost. It's incredible to watch him work. I gave him some water, but he didn't seem to want any. But I turned my back on the goats for 1 minute, and they snapped our tulips up. So the price you pay for having free lawn care. That and random droppings here and there. Alright, so this wall, or this section of the wall, also needs to be underpinned, just like over here. But I cannot excavate in the same way that I was able to over here. I know it's impossible to show on camera, but anytime I uncover a section like this, I spend half an hour looking at how the load is distributed from rock to rock and feeling certain rocks and seeing how they interact. And I can't remove these stones. So even though this particular rock right here is protruding out further than ideal, I cannot remove it. It simply would not be safe. The nice thing is that the stones are, most of them are very solid. I'm removing the ones that are not, and then we will pour concrete in a way that fills all of the voids and has probably a good 10 centimeters of support on the outside. So all of the crevices going back very deep here, deep underneath here, will be filled with concrete, and it will be more or less just as solid as if it was solid concrete. Plus, this is not a load-bearing wall, although every wall should be considered load-bearing when they are this heavy. Just gotta take it slowly. So I've mixed up a batch of Portland cement-based mortar, which I'm using to point quite a lot of these areas and kind of do a little bit of rendering. And for any stone purist who's watching, they're currently screaming at their screen because cement is a terrible product to use. I've talked to myself about how I hate using cement on these walls because they can't breathe. But in this particular case, it's the right product to use for me. The reason why is because I plan on excavating this out tomorrow, hopefully, if the mortar is completely dry. And based on the way the stones are stacked, I expect once I start removing some of these that must be removed in order to underpin, that the rest are just going to start to fall. The existing lime mortar is extremely old and gone, and as I just kind of feel the different stones, there's just not a lot of good quality stacking here. You normally, across the walls, have that Jenga effect that I've talked about, but not here. And because there's a window above and the weight surrounding the window is actually transferred down directly here, it's an especially critical spot to make sure it's properly supported. So the cement will keep the stones together, and as I'm pointing and rendering, I'm being careful to make sure that every stone around it has a weeping hole, I guess, a small hole where any moisture or water can escape and can dry out. Plus we are facing the south here, so any moisture will naturally dry out from the sun and the air coming from the outside. The reason I can't use lime-based mortar in this situation is because lime takes ages to dry. When you're pulling these stones away, what happens is you'll have a stone that's slightly loose, and then you pull it out, and now there's a cavity. Well, that stone above it, you can hold up with just your finger because, again, of that Jenga effect. But as you pull that away, then the next stone falls down easier. And so it kind of comes down to if you can hold in some of the stones with just literally a couple pounds of force, the entire wall stays intact. It's a bit of an exaggeration there, but it really does come down to that. You can be holding up a stone like this, but if that drops, well, then the next one drops, and then after that, it's kind of this compounding effect. So if you can just keep a couple of those stones together with a little bit of force, which is what this will do, then everything will stay together, which I know sounds impossible, but that's just kind of how it works. I'm going to attempt to do a 1 to 1.2 meter section of underpinning with removing all of these stones that are protruding, which is why I went ahead and I put the mortar on here and gave it enough time to cure. Again, it's not structural, it's just to hold the stones together. But this is the worst wall of all of what I've done so far. The first one might have seemed bad because we had this gaping hole, but that one, just based on how everything was stacked, that was easy. So I get that on camera, it's impossible to see what's going on here. All of these stones are kind of bulging out. It's almost like either they just dug a trench and tossed them in haphazardly before they started paying attention to how they stacked the walls, or maybe it somehow collapsed in. It doesn't look like that. It looks like they just kind of tossed stones into a trench. I dug down until I reached bedrock, but then you see sitting on the bedrock, which should be the main support, are just these small, loose pinning stones, as they're called. But man, I'm gonna take it slow. This one is the worst out of all of them. If at any point I feel it's not safe, I'll stop, and then we will just underpin what we have and lock the rest in as it is. It's just a mess. It's so weird because most of the house they stack so carefully